there are two epigraphs, which are those little quotes at the beginning of books. The first one is from a Native American poet whose name is Dick Lowry. Has anybody seen Smoke Signals, the movie Smoke Signals? If you've seen Smoke Signals, you may remember there's a poem that gets recited at the very end of the movie, and this story, the part of the epigraph is from this poem. How do we forgive our fathers? Maybe in a dream. Do we forgive our fathers for leaving us too often or forever when we were little? The second epigraph is from the Child's Rhyme, which is sort of gave me the title, Patty Cake, Baker's Man. There's a version of it that goes like this: prick it and mark it with a T, and there will be enough for Tommy and me. Before I start to read, I was driving down 9 Mile one day a few years ago, and I saw this guy walking down the street, and he sort of had his hands on top of his head like this, and he was just kind of stumbling down the street. And I thought to myself, that would be a great opening for a book. This is The Baker's Men, Chapter 1. The man hurried along the sidewalk on the other side of the street with both hands clasped on top of his head. He looked like he was trying to keep his scalp from floating away. Hold it, baby, Jared Whalen murmured into his cell phone. He watched the man lurch past the cooling units of the food land, then dodder out of his line of vision. He had parked his scout car in the lot of the Ethiopian restaurant across from the supermarket to make his call. Burly in his Kevlar and with close-cropped blonde hair, Whalen put the cruiser in gear and eased up to the edge of 9 Mile Road. The financial meltdown of the previous year brought a spike in B&Es around Ferndale and neighboring Pleasant Ridge, so they were all warned to be alert for anything unusual. Case in point, this guy. As he watched, the man continued down the sidewalk, more or less in a straight line. Seems harmless, Whalen decided, and settled back. This character might just be a bit tipsy, maybe got overserved at Rosie O'Grady's down the street and started to walk home. At least he wasn't lit to the point where he was weaving all over the place so he'd step into traffic and become Whalen's immediate problem. What's the matter, sugar, the woman on the phone said. Nothing more to say to me? Whalen smiled at the petulance in her voice. He turned his attention from the man on the sidewalk and pictured her pillowy red lips drawn in the pout he loved. He met her last Valentine's Day when he stopped her for speeding on Woodward, and one thing led to another. And now they were dating. They hadn't spoken all day because her ex never picked up the kids as he promised he would, so she was busy with the two girls. But now they were asleep and she could talk freely. Come on, baby, he said. There's lots more where that came from. He went on with her for another 10 minutes until the dispatcher's voice broke in. 1056, 7-Eleven at 9 Mile and Pinecrest. Meet the clerk. Whalen sighed. 1056, intoxicated person. The 7-Eleven was 4 blocks west of where he was parked. Probably the guy he just saw walking down the street. No big deal, but still. Reluctantly, he said goodbye to his sweetheart and told the police radio, Unit 1267 responding. He swung the cruiser onto 9 Mile toward the convenience store. Did you see him? Nadine Cotter asked. Who? Guy I called about. He just took off. No one was inside or outside the store. Whalen walked around the side of the building and checked behind the dumpster. Nobody there. Up front, he said, I don't see anybody, Nadine. What's going on? Standing in the doorway, she sucked the last of her cigarette and backhanded it onto the blacktop. She was a tough-looking woman with spiked hair, bleached white, and tattoos of roses twined among her knuckles on both hands. Whalen liked to stop in to say hello and share a smoke on quiet. Guy comes into the store and starts mumbling some shit about the bakery. Her words came out in staccato bursts of smoke. I go, dude, what are you talking about? And he's all, the bakery, the bakery. Sunday night, Whalen said, always brings out the whack jobs, Nadine. I know, and this guy seemed pretty jumpy. But then he goes, police. And then he's back outside sitting in the corner. In another minute, he's up again and walking away. Which direction? Up Pinecrest. She pointed around the corner of the store. Thing was, she said, his head. It was a bloody mess. Wayland stared at her. I'm serious, like he took a shampoo in it or something. We're talking about a stocky black male, dark sweatshirt and Levi's, walking kind of like he's in a daze. So you did see him. Further up the street I did, yeah. There was blood in his head? Hello? Nadine gave a loose, wheezy laugh, like a bag of gravel shifting in her chest. The whole right side of his face was covered with it. The right side, the side away from Wayland. I thought he might have fallen, maybe hurt himself. Anyway, he didn't seem right, so I called it in. Where was he sitting? Over there. She pointed toward the middle rack that held propane tanks at the far side of the store. In the white glare from the overhead lights, Wayland saw spots on the ground beside the rack. He swept his flashlight beam over the area. Definitely blood. A second blue and white rolled up, and another patrol officer stepped out, adjusting the gear on the belt. Gail Crimmins was a substantial woman with dark hair pinned back and skeptical eyes. Wayland filled her in quickly and asked her to take Nadine's statement. He jumped into a scout car and wheeled it around the lot and out to Pinecrest, thinking, bakery, blood, police, this is not good. He eased the car north, scanning the empty sidewalks and pausing at each corner to shine his spotlight down the side streets. When he reached Blair Park, he figured the guy could be anywhere inside the dark grounds, so he made a Y-turn back toward 9. He called dispatch and asked for assistance to search the neighborhood. At the traffic light on 9, he took a left and drove east, picking up speed as his unease grew. The only bakery left in Ferndale was the Cakewalk, near the southeast corner of 9 and Plan Avon. There used to be 2, but the other one went bust the summer before. Most Ferndale businesses weathered the financial crash, but a few, like the other bakery, couldn't hold on, and now there were empty stores like missing teeth around the downtown. He skidded to a stop in front of the Cakewalk, facing the wrong way on 9. The street was deserted and dark, except for the lights at Rosie's down toward Woodward. The front selling area of the store was empty, with bare display counters and shelves. The front door was locked. He saw a light glowing in the rear, so he trotted around to the back of the building. The bakery was the third business off the side street, beside 2 restaurants closed for the night. He pulled at the handle of the steel rear entrance to the Cakewalk, and the door opened. He drew his duty weapon and stepped inside. A short corridor from the door to the back room ended at a partition that blocked his view. He heard no sounds except the pounding of blood in his head and the knocking of his heart. He stood for a moment, quieting his breathing, getting himself ready for what he might find, and looked into the workroom. Lit by overhead fluorescence, the scene took his breath away. He struggled to stay upright against the partition. He stood like that until the room stopped spinning. Then he pulled himself together to call it in. It was 9:32 on the evening of April 12th, 2009, Easter Sunday. That's the end of chapter 1. Later on in the book, there's a lull in the investigation, and Bruce decides to spend one Saturday with his son. He tries to spend every spare moment he has with his son. So they go to the Big Boy on John R. and 13, and they go to a park and spend the day looking around. And he decides that he doesn't want to take his son back yet, so he wants to stop in and do something else with the boy. On the way back to his son lives in a group home in Berkeley. On the way back to the group home, unwilling to leave his son yet, Prue stopped at the Lawrence Street Gallery to see the chief's wife's show. Earlier in the book, the chief of police invited him to Lawrence Street Gallery to see his wife's show. And his wife's show is actually Sue's show. As you'll hear, Sue had a 2-woman show last October, and it was a show that was sort of dedicated to her mother for her mother's 100th birthday. So that's where they're going to wind up. Okay, so Prue stopped at the Lawrence Street Gallery to see the chief's wife's show. One day, a few years ago, on an outing to the Detroit Institute of Arts, Proust discovered Toby loved to draw. They passed a group of students drawing artwork for one of the museum's classes, and on a whim, Proust put a pencil in Toby's hand and steadied a pad of paper on the tray of Toby's wheelchair. His son knew exactly what to do. He moved the pencil over the paper to create abstract drawings with as purposeful gestures as he ever made, gazing down at the paper out of the corner of his eye to check the progress of his drawing. It was a revelation. Now they spent an hour walking around the long, narrow art cooperative in Ferndale. Debbie Warnock's pieces, Debbie Warnock is the police chief's wife. Debbie Warnock's pieces were amazingly complex collages that celebrated each decade of her mother's 100-year-old life. On the wall beside each work was a card describing it, which Proust read out loud to Toby and then described the elements of the work. Each piece combined aspects of Debbie's mother's life with what was happening in women's history in the country at the time. Toby was focused and fascinated. So then they go home, and the plan is that he's going to drop Toby off to he's going to drop Toby off to get changed, and going to take him to Dino's, where Proust, who plays the guitar, I don't know where that came to me, is in a band. That's the next part of this chapter, but I won't read that. So that's the book. That's the beginning of the book, and that's the middle of the book to give you a feel for what goes on. It turns into a more complicated case, as these things always do, and he, with Toby's help, comes out on the other end of it. So that's it. Thanks again for coming. If you have not had the chance to buy books, I'll be happy to sign you.